Mackinac and fudge have been synonymous for over 100 years, and it is now one of our main exports from Mackinac.
It started in the 1800s, and this was a destination that they got out of the cities.
After the Civil War, there was this growth of resort communities around the United States and Canada, and that's because there was a post-Civil War desire to escape. So people left Midwestern cities and they came to the Upper Great Lakes, and of all the places they came, none was quite as much fun as Mackinac, and so it became a very popular summer destination.
The temperature is perfect for making candy, and if you go way back, you didn't have any air conditioning or anything like that.
I didn't really think that weather had a big impact on it. It kind of had this perfect storm of allowing fudge to sit at a right temperature and to cook consistently over and over again, because in places that fudge has been tried, sometimes it's failed because the fudge never sets up correctly.
I think people have a really big fascination with fudge because you can't get it anywhere else in the way you get it here. You know, you can go like around the States and they'll say, oh, it's Mackinac Island fudge, and it's really just not the same.
People associate it with going on vacation, and so it just grew and grew and grew, and still extremely popular today.
I think it just, you think Mackinac Island, you think bikes, you think horses, you think fudge.
For the tourist who visit this historic island every summer, a trip to Mackinac is never quite complete without a little bit of fudge. This sweet souvenir has become synonymous with a summer spent enjoying the cool breeze off of the Straits of Mackinac and the clip-clop of horse hooves down a main street in island destinations seemingly from a different time. But for the Callewaert family, the fudge business isn't just about recipes, ingredients, or the laborious task of crafting a delicious, one-of-a-kind confection. It's about captivating an audience. It's about the sweet smell tied to an even sweeter memory. It's about giving people a slice of Mackinac that they can take home with them.
Fudge does have a good shelf life right after you make it. It lasts about 10 days and it doesn't melt. That is a common question when people are like, uh-oh, it's gonna melt. And it's like, it won't melt. You have to, really, really increase the temperature to a point where, way over 100 degrees to get it to start melting again.
When the Victorian era got going and people were traveling, people with wealth from Detroit or Milwaukee, wherever, the candy makers kind of followed them, and up here was perfect for them. They had a nice season, and it just became known for it.
The process of making fudge on the large marble tables was very dramatic, and so that idea of the action of making the candy being connected to the sales of the candy was connected very, very early on. And pretty soon Mackinac and fudge became interlinked. And it's interesting, by the 1820s, the fudge makers are coming saying, come and see us make our fudge, make our famous fudge. It's not come and taste it or buy it, it's come and watch us make it, because they know if you watch the action, you'll buy the candy. And so pretty soon, the candy kitchens became the fudge shops of Mackinac.
And even like when you're in the fudge shop and you're watching, these little kids watching the guy make fudge, and then like that very end piece they cut off, and it's just sitting on the slab, and then you're like, are you kidding? And there's nothing better than a warm piece of candy that just got made. It's the best. So it just, it just makes people happy.
While the origins of Mackinac's connection to this confection date back over a century, the story of the most recognized and famous brand of the island's iconic takeaway treat begins not with streets lined with bicycles and horse-drawn carriages, but deep within the hustle and bustle of Michigan's Motor City. Born in 1907, Harry Ryba's early life wasn't easy. His father was a brass molder and often out of work. The oldest of 5, Harry had to help pay the bills, dropping out of school to work on a farm by the time he was 14. Described as having the soul of a carnival pitchman and the heart of a hustler, Harry's early work was a seemingly endless cycle of odd jobs and big ideas, until a chance encounter selling butter to a caramel corn shop owner finally presented Harry with the opportunity he'd been looking for.
In the 1930s, he bought Harry Coyle's caramel shop on East Jefferson at Chalmers, and he made pan fudge at first, But then at one of the state fairs, he met Gerald Murdoch. And Gerald Murdoch was hired to come in the store and make traditional Mackinac fudge on the large slabs.
So Grandpa bought all the equipment for fudge, and it was right by a theater. So theaters at the time didn't sell any concession. So he had popcorn, he had caramel corn, and added fudge to it.
And in Detroit, he began selling famous Mackinac Island fudge because he was using a traditional Mackinac Island recipe.
According to Mom, he had, through her childhood, had many failures. And in this one, this fudge was a success.
After a lifetime of struggle, Harry, his wife Ethel, and their children turned that little caramel corn shop in Detroit into a mainstay at carnivals and industrial shows nationwide, and a true family business where every Ryba had a role to play.
There was Patsy was the oldest, and Janice, and then there was Jimmy, their son, and then there's Gail and Rena, and Kevin came later on in life. But they all worked, and it was expected of you to work. That's for sure.
All of Grandpa's kids worked in the store, just cut and dry. They were doing a lot of state fairs, and it was called Mackinac Island fudge. So people would ask Grandpa all the time, "Where's your place on Mackinac Island?"
My grandpa said, maybe we should go to Mackinac and see what all the fuss is about.
In 1960, he had the opportunity to buy Phil Corby's fudge shop right on Main Street. The family still has that as one of the Ryba fudge shops today on Mackinac Island.
He didn't care if he ruffled anybody's feathers. He came in and started making fudge out in front of the window. He blew all the smell out on the street.
But it was Harry who really took it to the next step. Harry really knew that the marketing and the sales and the drama of making fudge was going to really help him sell the candy in his store. So in the past, they made the fudge in the back of the shop and people could come in and watch it. But Harry moved it out to the front window. So people walking down the street would watch the candy makers making fudge, and they would be kind of mesmerized standing on the street. And then he would take the sweet smell of the fudge and he would use fans and draw it up into the attic and blow it down out of the eaves on the top of people who were standing there.
That's what I remember, like with Mackinac. I loved the smell of fudge. Even though everybody says you can only smell the horses, it's fudge for me all the way.
That was part of the original thing, blowing that smell onto the sidewalk, definitely. And we made fudge right in front of everybody. You know, most at that time they made it in the back rooms, and now they're all out in front.
And well, I mean, you're on the island, you smell the fudge. It's very pleasant, and it pulls people in. So as soon as that happened, everyone was like, "Why don't we think of that?" And that's just how it is now.
While some on the island saw Harry as a brash outsider, it didn't take long for that knack for innovative marketing to make him the self-proclaimed Fudge King of Mackinac Island. And soon, it was a young apprentice from his original downtown Detroit shops who would be responsible for growing the modest candy business into a full-fledged fudge empire.
Well, in 1950, I was selling papers outside of one of Mr. Ryba's stores on Mack and Chalmers. And that year, he got a stand at the Michigan State Fair. And he asked me if I would like to work the fair for him. And I did. And then when the fair was over and the fall came, he asked me if I would like to work in the store at night, 2-3 days a week.
You know, I think he was 12 years old or something, and he had an extremely loud voice, and he was basically disturbing the guests in Harry's shop, and to shut him up, he basically gave him a part-time job and brought him in, and he started working for Harry back then.
And that's where I worked 2 or 3 nights a week from 5 to 10. And then pretty soon that went on, and I got involved with his daughter, and we started dating.
Met my mom, fell in love with my mom, and they started dating, and he went off to the Army, came back, even asked her to marry him, and she did, and Victor came back, and they started working together.
One thing that I liked so much about the fudge business was when you went to these shows, every day was basically different. You know, you have a show that lasts 9 days, and then you pick up all your stuff and you go to another building or another city, and the variety was just tremendous, and that I liked immensely. We called it Mackinac Island Fudge, and pretty soon so many of our customers were repeated, you know, we were out in Mackinac and we couldn't find you. We couldn't find you. So that's when we decided we better go to Mackinac. And we did in 1960. And we just went on from there.
Harry's daughter, Rena, and Victor married when they were really quite young in Detroit, and they came north. Harry brought Victor and Rena with him, and they were both in the business right from the beginning. Rena was more in the background, but at one time there was actually Rena's Fudge Shop on Mackinac Island, and so her name was on one of the fudge shops for a while. But she was always very supportive, a big part of the family business, but mostly in the background while Harry and Victor were out in the front lines.
It was just two-story place with 3 stories on either side. Front, you made fudge, and in the back, you had all the storage, and then upstairs, they had 2 living quarters that we lived in, and that went on for about, I think, 5 years till we bought a house, and Harry bought a house, so they had 2 separate houses, and then we started expanding, and from there, and other family members started to come up, cousins, and they started making fudge too.
Once they set a foothold with the Corby store, they began to look for other opportunities. And in the 1960s, it was a time when you could still purchase stores on Mackinac Island, and so they were aggressive about looking for and finding new opportunities for fudge shops, and did a really good job of finding different locations throughout the town.
And then after Dad and Grandpa bought the Lakeview, the lot across the street was empty, so they built the mall, and so then we opened a fudge shop there. And then up at the gatehouse, there was a spot there. And then our corner store was a May's Fudge Shop. And when Mr. May died, we bought the store from his daughter.
I would go into the Denny and I would hang out on the sugar bags. And it was always family and family friends making fudge and stuff. So I would go in, I knew who everyone was, and I would just watch what they were doing and everything like that. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the smell, it's kind of innate, I guess, into me now, the smell of chocolate, but not chocolate fudge, the actual bitter chocolate. And what a sugar bag smells like, the actual paper, it's just kind of gets into your brain when you're that young and doing it.
All the shops had white boxes, and Grandpa thought they've got to stand out. So pink seemed to really stand out compared to everything else.
They changed it originally from the white to the pink, and they put the bridge behind the logo to make sure that everybody knows we're on Mackinac Island without saying it, and it's worked out great.
We are the bright pink shop. Anyone could not know our names, but they're like, just go to the pink one. I don't remember the name of it, but it's pink.
Having an identifiable brand was one thing, but Harry, Victor, and Rena also knew that, as they had done for the process and entertainment of crafting the fudge out on the front windows with that unmistakable smell, they also had to think bigger when it came to the creativity involved in continually giving Mackinac Island visitors some new flavors to try.
Most Mac only had 4 flavors, but Harry had 8 flavors. The original flavors were chocolate pecan, classic chocolate, and maple, vanilla. There was rum black walnut, which we don't make anymore.
And then chocolate peanut butter happened, and then strawberry and pistachio happened, and then we started gourmets. Dad was like, I need a turtle fudge. So I thought, well, we'll just put the caramel on top with some pecans. And so we did that, and that turned into a great success. So then you're like, well, what else can we put on top of the fudge?
One of the things that's really impressed me is the way in which they've been very creative about coming up with new flavors and new mixtures and new kinds of fudge that appeal to the wide variety of visitors that come to the island.
I would see a lot come from the customers of saying, well, do you have cherry fudge? And you're just like, well, there's, we're by Traverse City, so it's like, okay, so then we just kind of start brainstorming and, okay, let's try this and try that.
We have a rocky road now So you just do a lot of experimenting.
But regardless of whether or not you're carefully crafting a gourmet fudge flavor or just a simple slab of classic chocolate, one thing's for sure. While it may look easy from the other side of a window, the business of making that perfect piece of fudge is both a science and a truly grueling endeavor.
It's not an easy job cooking fudge when you're standing over a stove and cooking something at 240 degrees and you're walking around a 500-pound marble slab for 12 hours a day and you're making 50 to 60 a day.
Each flavor has its own temperature.
There's a lot of thought that goes into it. I mean, when you cook a batch to a certain temperature, we divide a degree into 3 parts, light one, a plain one, and a good one.
We call them steps. A lot of kids, when you're teaching them to cook and you tell them that, they're kind of like, really? But I can tell the difference in a third of a degree. It's about 30 seconds to get through a degree.
And we don't have digital thermometers, so you're inches away from the 220 degree sugar, and you've got to make sure that you read the temperature right.
I actually had an opportunity to make fudge one day when I was writing the fudge book, and what I realized when I made a batch of fudge is physically how challenging it is. It's a lot of hard work that has to be done on a very timely basis because the temperatures that you have of your fudge mixture on your marble table are critical to the success of the batch of fudge. So it is a very precise process, and it's one that takes some physical strength to actually be able to work the fudge up into the proper loaf to get it cut right so you can sell those half-pound slices of fudge.
It's a very precise process that we have for our fudge. So that's why it's mostly family that makes fudge for us.
Our batches are half the size of everyone's on the island. And the key for creamy fudge, which we strive for, is being able to work the fudge back and forth, stretch the sugar. When you have a huge batch, there's not much room on the table. With ours, when you walk the slab, as we call it, you're conceptually, think of a surfer and that beautiful wave, the roll. That's my dad taught me, you bring what's on the bottom to the top, and what's top and rolling it back and forth, and that stretches the sugar. The science of it, I honestly don't know, but I know when I taste it what's right.
Everybody would be doing it if it was easy, as they say. So it is hard, but it's great work.
When we close in October, we don't stop making fudge. It keeps going because people are ordering in the winter. We do a lot of mail orders for businesses and companies, and as well as individuals. A lot of people send fudge all year round.
Even in the earliest days of Ryba's fudge shops, Harry knew that a big part of establishing a lasting brand was creating a sense of loyalty with your customers. Without a doubt, those little chunks of creamy chocolate were enough to build a passionate fan base, and Harry knew just what to call them.
A fudgie is a tourist that visits Mackinac because we sell so much fudge.
A fudgie is someone who comes to the island for the day. You probably ride around the island and buy some fudge and get back on the boat and leave. And in fact, we had fudgie pins.
Fudge is a term my grandfather is credited for making up. He basically had these buttons made up of Ryba's Mackinac Island fudgie and handed them the metal buttons out in all the fudge shops, and that term just stuck.
The term is fudgy. It's not forty for going to the fort. It's not horsey for riding on horses. It's fudgy because it shows you how pervasive the connection is between Mackinac Island's tourists and the fudge business on Mackinac Island.
We would have Fudgy Day, my friends and I, and we go to every shop and try every piece of fudge. And I always loved Ryba's the best.
Today, Ryba's has grown far beyond even Harry's wildest aspirations. For if Victor and Rena realized one thing, it was that the key ingredient to long-term success in the Mackinac Island fudge business wasn't marble slabs, aroma-blowing fans, or ingenious flavors. To make something last as long as fudge can last on this island, more than anything, it takes a devoted family.
A number of families have been in the business of making fudge on the island, and almost all of those families have moved on at this point. What's fascinating about the Ryba Callewaert family is that it's moved from generation to generation to generation, and they have had the enthusiasm and the commitment to staying with the business, and they have done a good job of being stewards of the Ryba trademark and brand, and it's, again, still here today and doing very well.
You always knew you were going to be in the fudge business. I mean, you always wanted to. And then you're like the next generation, you're like Ann and Les's youngest, Lily, is great at making candies. So she was just good from the start.
Well, it's just in our DNA, I think. Everybody we're all about fudge. My father, who passed away, he was just the ultimate, he was the fudge guy. He drove around with a case of fudge in his trunk in the wintertime, and we'd go to different places. He said, go to the trunk and give me a box of fudge.
When you're in the store, you hear a lot of people saying, oh, the neighbor's taking care of my dog. I got to bring her something. Or, I told someone I was coming up here and the whole office gave me a list and I got to buy all this fudge for all these different people. So it's definitely sought after. Or what? You went there and you didn't bring me any fudge? So it's become a tradition.
Ryba's on like a technical level. We have the creamiest fudge on the island, but on a cheesy but genuinely, I believe this level, it's a family business and it has love put into it. You can feel it when you walk in the shop. Like, people care about this place. This was built by a person who did nothing but absolutely adore his family.
Fudge is family. That's what it really is. It's enabled us all to stay together.
My first job was folding boxes and selling a few slices of fudge.
Started in 1945, I believe was the year Grandpa made his first batch. Most small businesses don't survive that long and generationally survive. I taught my son Max how to make fudge, and that was something I very much cherished.
I was with my dad when he was teaching me, and my grandpa came into the shop and he just sat and watched me do it.
I think something that my grandfather really blurred the line with is the career and the family. He didn't want to have a career and then his family. He wanted it all to be together. So I think as we take care of each other as a family, we see the customer as an extension of that. This is our family connecting with other people's families.
From day one, we've always had the fudge shops, and then we started working in them. Whether summer or winter, we were always a part of fudge, and then you'd be working along with your family all the time. So it's just a part of my history, a part of my family, just a part of my life.
When you're in the fudge shop and people come in and they're like, oh, I love, it's an everyday thing for you, but for them, they're on vacation to the jewel of the Midwest. And that fudge really is a whole part of it, as much as the ferry ride, the carriage tour. The fudge is an integral part of that experience that you have.
The story of Ryba's Fudge Shops is about more than just fudge. It's a story of love, of commitment, of family. And it is a story that will continue on for generations to come.
It's tradition. That's what we've been doing our whole lives.